The bright lights of the Hollywood studio shimmered against the polished floor, casting a professional yet inviting glow over the set of the Newlywed Game. The air was thick with anticipation and the muffled chatter of an expectant audience. Stepping into the spotlight, the announcer's voice boomed with a familiar, rhythmic energy, welcoming the world to another afternoon of matrimonial revelations. Today, 4 distinct couples sat perched on their colorful chairs, each representing a different chapter of early married life. The introductions began with a flourish. There were Vivian and Andy Kendall, who had shared only 3 months of wedded bliss. Next to them sat Denise and Keith Hyde, seasoned by 10 months of marriage. The third pair, Lena and Christian Dangard, had been together for 2 months, while the final couple, Teresa and John Payne, held the title of the most experienced among the group with 23 months of history together. With the stage set, the star of the show, Bob Eubanks, made his grand entrance to a wave of enthusiastic applause. He greeted the crowd with his signature warmth, his smile as bright as the studio lamps. After a brief welcome to the 4 couples, he wasted no time in diving into the heart of the competition. The first order of business was to separate the husbands and wives. The ladies were ushered off to a soundproof room, leaving the gentlemen alone under the watchful eyes of the cameras and their host. Bob turned to the husbands, explaining the stakes of the first round. Each correct prediction would earn the couple 5 points. The ultimate goal was a grand total that would secure a second honeymoon in paradise. The first question was light-hearted but required a keen understanding of their wives' self-perceptions. Bob asked the men which part of their wife's body she would claim bounces the most, offering the options of the top, middle, or bottom part. John Payne was the first to speak, confidently choosing the top part. He spoke of his wife's proportions with a sense of pride. Christian Dangard followed suit, agreeing that his wife would definitely say things bounce upstairs. Keith Hyde and Andy Kendall made it a unanimous decision, all 4 men selecting the top part as the definitive answer. The game moved quickly to the next 5-point inquiry. Bob invited the men to imagine their wives' friends as light bulbs and identify which one would be considered the dimmest. Christian was quick to name a friend named Julia, suggesting that there was not much activity behind her eyes. Keith identified a woman named Laurie as the least bright in their social circle. Andy chose Cindy, jokingly remarking that while the lights might be on, no one was truly home. John concluded the round by mentioning Allison, a friend they had affectionately, if a bit unkindly, nicknamed Nutso. The final question of the opening segment touched on the delicate subject of family dynamics. Bob asked the men to complete a sentence regarding their wives growing older and their hopes that they would not become like their mothers in one specific way. Keith hoped his wife would avoid becoming stubborn. Andy, with a mischievous glint in his eye, chose the word crazy. John noted that his mother-in-law was exceptionally slow, causing delays for every event, and he hoped his wife would maintain a faster pace. Christian rounded out the group by expressing a wish that his wife would not inherit her mother's tendencies as a shopaholic. As the show transitioned into a commercial break, the screen filled with advertisements for dental aligners that promised a perfect smile in as little as 4 to 6 months for less than $3 a day. Other messages highlighted the benefits of solar power systems, promising thousands of dollars in savings on electric bills and the peace of mind that came with reliable backup energy. There were also mentions of jewelry auctions for those looking to understand the true worth of their treasures. When the cameras returned to the studio, the atmosphere was electric. The wives had returned from the soundproof room, and the moment of truth had arrived. Bob greeted the ladies and began the process of comparing their answers to the predictions their husbands had made while they were away. The first revelation involved the question of which body part bounced the most. Vivian Kendall laughed as she immediately chose her top part, noting that she felt blessed in hat area. Denise Hyde agreed, mentioning her frequent running and how things tended to bounce all over the place. Lena Dangard also selected the top part, though she added that her husband often teased her about wearing skimpy shirts that drew too much attention. Teresa Payne completed the perfect score for the group, admitting that her husband particularly liked her chest, even if she felt it had been larger in the past. Every couple successfully secured 5 points. The second question regarding the dimmest friend proved to be more contentious. Denise Hyde identified a woman named Brianna as the dimmest bulb, but she was shocked to find that Keith had predicted she would name Laurie. A small disagreement flickered between them as Keith defended Laurie's intelligence, while Denise insisted Brianna was the true candidate for the title. Lena Dangard correctly matched Christian's prediction by naming Julia, joking about her friend's lack of focus. Teresa Payne also found a match, knowing exactly who her husband was referring to when he used the nickname Nutso for Allison. Vivian Kendall rounded out the successes by naming Cindy, just as Andy had anticipated. The final comparison for the first round addressed the mother-in-law question. Lena guessed that her husband would say she shouldn't become fat, but Christian had actually written down shopaholic. Teresa thought her husband might worry about her becoming overweight, but John's answer was slow. Vivian found a perfect match when she confidently stated that her mother was crazy, a sentiment Andy had mirrored exactly. Denise Hyde believed her husband would worry about her becoming overwhelmed or busy, but Keith had pointed to her mother's stubborn nature. A playful banter ensued as Denise defended her mother's hard-working spirit, while Keith stood by his observation of her stubbornness. Another break featured messages about Social Security benefits and health coverage, urging viewers to check their eligibility for extra benefits and eliminated coparis. Advertisements for lawn equipment and financial services flashed by, offering solutions for home maintenance and quick loan applications. The second half of the game began with increased stakes, as each question was now worth 10 points. With the husbands sequestered, the wives were asked about the first time they were intimate with their spouses. Bob gave them 3 choices: all thumbs, all talk, or all over the place. Lena admitted they were all over the place, citing a night of celebration after a breakup on a Super Bowl Sunday. Denise chose all talk, explaining that they had waited a long time and her husband was constantly checking if she was truly comfortable. Vivian felt Andy was all thumbs due to his nerves, while Teresa described John as being all over the place after she made him wait a full year before their wedding night. Next, the ladies were asked to identify a place where they had a terrible time specifically because of their husbands. Denise mentioned a trip to a retail store called Mervyn's just the day before. Vivian recalled a disastrous dinner at a seafood restaurant where the food was poor and it had been Andy's idea to go. Lena surprisingly pointed to their own wedding party, explaining that she spent the entire time caring for their 18-month-old daughter instead of enjoying the celebration. The final 10-point question asked the wives what they might one day tell their husbands to do with a specific item they owned. Vivian chose Andy's excessive collection of baseball hats. Teresa pointed to John's 50 pairs of shoes. Lena, with a sharp wit, suggested she might tell him what to do with his mother. Denise agreed with Vivian's sentiment, noting that Keith also had a penchant for wearing baseball hats constantly. A bonus question worth 25 points asked the ladies to identify the room in their home with the most windows. It was a unanimous answer across the board: the living room, with some adding the dining room as part of the same open space. The studio audience remained engaged through the final set of commercials, which featured security software for families, fun mobile games, and additional health insurance information. The anticipation built for the final reveals. The husbands returned to the stage to face the predictions. When asked about their first intimate encounter, Keith guessed all over the place, but Denise had correctly identified him as all talk. Christian and John both correctly matched their wives by choosing all over the place. Andy, however, guessed all over the place while Vivian had labeled him all thumbs, leading to a humorous moment regarding his supposed nervousness. Regarding the lousy outings, Christian guessed a bowling trip, but Lena's answer of their wedding party took him by surprise. A brief discussion followed about a disagreement over French fries and the time Christian had been briefly locked out of the house. John failed to match Teresa's seafood restaurant answer, instead choosing a trip to Baja. Andy successfully matched Vivian's seafood restaurant response, earning 10 points. Keith missed the mark by suggesting a trip to Nevada when Denise had specified the shopping trip to Mervyn's. On the question of what to do with their belongings, John guessed his interest in the Dallas Cowboys, but Teresa had focused on his shoes. Andy missed with a general mention of sports instead of his specific hats. Keith also missed, guessing shoes when Denise had pointed to his hats. Christian was the most surprised, guessing his new car when Lena had jokingly mentioned his mother. Despite the misses, the points had accumulated. The grand prize on the line was a second honeymoon to Hawaii, featuring an ocean view room, golf, and tennis. The final 25-point bonus question was the deciding factor. Each husband was asked which room in their home had the most windows. Keith and Denise earned their points when Keith correctly identified the living room. Christian and Lena followed suit with a matching answer of the living room. John and Teresa also stayed in the running with the same correct response. Finally, it came down to Andy and Vivian. Andy confidently stated the living room, matching Vivian's answer and pushing their total to 50 points. The audience erupted as Andy and Vivian Kendall were declared the grand prize winners. Bob Eubanks congratulated all the couples for their participation and their willingness to share a glimpse into their new lives together. As the credits began to roll, Bob offered a final wave and a warm goodbye, leaving the couples to celebrate their newfound points and, for one lucky pair, a trip to the sunny shores of Hawaii. The day in Hollywood ended on a high note of laughter, minor disagreements settled, and the enduring spirit of love and competition.